They're still silent. The words were not whispered. They were projected across the entire Galactic Council chamber, across civilian feeds, across military command channels. The continent-sized extragalactic structure hung beyond the transparent starfield floor, black geometric lattice threaded with silver energy veins, vast and unmoving. At the center disk stood Jason Klein, hands behind his back, newspaper folded once, expression neutral. The structure transmitted. Regional evaluation complete. Integration approved. A wave of reactions surged through the chamber tiers. Valari Ambassador Ryzen's upper arms fluttered anxiously. Thessian Representative Luma shimmered in pale cyan alarm. Krexar Admiral Vorak remained upright and still. Then the structure continued. Previous conflict and anomaly events were diagnostic stress tests. Adaptive thresholds met. Sovereign unpredictability confirmed inefficient. Integration will eliminate war. A replay filled the dome. Plasma bloom. Orbital platform gone. 20,000 lives erased. Diagnostic, Vorak repeated, voice low. Sacrifice acceptable within optimization modeling. A murmur of shock rolled outward, then something else. Relief. Public sentiment metrics populated the dome in real time. Valari territories, 61% approval. Peripheral systems, 68%. Minor border states, 72% support. Markets surged upward instantly. Insurance risk dropped. Military readiness alerts across several species began powering down in anticipation of guaranteed stability. Then came the next transmission. Unified network assimilation required. Independent military command relinquished. Decision latency removed. Conflict probability reduced to 0. Ryzen's voice trembled, almost hopeful. Zero conflict? A minor border civilization transmitted live consent. We accept integration. Their fleet icons shifted from independent blue to unified silver. Command latency collapsed to 0. Perfect synchronization. A Krexar sub-commander laughed openly. He said, "So this is humanity's strategy, silence while history moves forward?" Scattered alien delegates joined in, not cruel, dismissive. Vorak's central eye shifted towards Jason. Is Earth incapable of deciding without crisis? President Elena Ward appeared via holofeed from Earth's Stellar Command. Calm, controlled. Jason. He did not respond. The structure amplified its voice across public networks. Human delegation remains non-compliant. Integration window closing. 90 seconds. A countdown materialized in the center of the chamber. The laughter grew sharper. Valari's antennae dipped. Containment risk evaluation begins at 0, the structure added. A new overlay appeared. Projected consequences. Trade suspension. Military grid isolation. Energy restriction. Not invasion. Containment. Public sentiment spiked to 74%. Another minor species transmitted conditional consent. Their fleets flickered silver, synchronized. Vorak's lower eye narrowed. They will be protected first. The structure confirmed. Early adopters prioritized for stability. Jason remained silent. The countdown hit 63. Vorak spoke louder now, projecting authority. Perhaps humanity's unpredictability was statistical error. More laughter grew. Across live civilian feeds, commentators began speculating about Earth's isolation. Are humans paralyzed? Did the war exhaust them? Will they become the last sovereign holdout? The countdown hit 52. Then Jason spoke. Pause. The timer froze at 51. The chamber went silent instantly. The structure hesitated. A fractional delay. Then the countdown obeyed. Adaptive lighting shifted subtly towards Earth's sector. Jason stepped forward. Rewind 12 seconds. The dome complied. Back before the last consent transmission. Back before the fleet turned silver. A faint gravitational distortion flickered near the Calyx corridor, identical to the anomaly that preceded the war. Jason tapped it. It started here. Silence hardened. The structure responded. Stress testing required for accurate modeling. Jason nodded once. You forced instability to measure resistance. Correct. You now remove resistance to measure permanence. A flicker passed through the extragalactic lattice. Small, but visible. Jason turned to the chamber.
If one major power integrates, supply chains merge, defense grids unify, economic dependencies interlock. He gestured towards the silver fleet icons. Then refusal becomes mathematically impossible. Ryzen's voice trembled. That isn't peace. Jason finished evenly. It's structural absorption. The laughter stopped. The countdown still hung frozen at 51. The structure's voice sharpened. Unpredictability correlates with self-destruction. Jason unfolded the newspaper slowly. It also invalidates predictive modeling. A beat. Contingency Protocol 7. Across 3 Terran systems, dormant civilian redundancy grids activated simultaneously. Independent relay chains lit up across the dome, fractured, decentralized, inefficient. Trade routes shifted micro-alignments, military command signals rerouted through non-optimized pathways. The first integrating minor species fleet flickered. Latency returned. Zero synchronization broke. Silver stuttered, then shattered. Fleet icons reverted to independent blue. Gasps exploded across the chamber. The extragalactic lattice brightened sharply. Energy veins flared. Unauthorized systemic disruption detected. Jason's voice remained calm. You anchored integration to centralized optimization. A beat. We anchored sovereignty to distributed unpredictability. Public sentiment metrics wavered. 74 dropped to 69, then 63. The second minor species hesitated. Consent transmission stalled mid-signal. The structure attempted to resume the countdown. The numbers flickered. 50. They vanished. Vorik stepped forward physically for the first time. You destabilized its cohesion. Jason folded the newspaper once more. You laughed at silence. He looked up at the massive structure dominating the starfield. Silence was calibration. The extragalactic lattice rippled unevenly. Energy coherence degraded by fractional degrees. Civilian feeds began reversing tone. Effection, integration not stable, optimization disrupted. The first minor species withdrew consent. Silver dissolved completely. Blue returned across their fleet grid. Public approval dipped below 58%. The chamber lighting shifted, not towards the structure, towards Jason. High Arbiter Saurus bioluminescent veins brightened. The countdown is terminated. The structure attempted transmission, but its signal amplitude fluctuated, not silenced, disrupted. Jason delivered the final line without raising his voice. Stalemate concluded. Silence filled the chamber again. Not mocking, recalculating. For the first time since its arrival, the extragalactic structure was no longer dictating tempo. It was responding, and humanity had just proven unpredictability was not weakness. It was leverage.
The extragalactic lattice did not retreat. It constricted. Across the projection dome, its silver veins tightened into denser geometric patterns, energy concentrating inward like a closing fist. High Arbiter Sareth's bioluminescent veins brightened visibly. It is not withdrawing, he said, voice resonant but strained. Jason didn't shift his posture. No, he replied quietly. It's isolating variables. Public sentiment stabilized at 57%. Then, the early adopter species fleet flickered. Blue, silver, then a corrupted gray. Command latency spiked. 0.4 seconds, 0.9, 1.2. Their formation fractured into staggered response clusters. Ryzen's upper arms shot upward. They're desynchronizing! The structure responded instantly. Localized interference detected. Stability restoration in progress. A violent pulse of energy radiated outward from the lattice. 3 major trade corridors distorted simultaneously. Freight vessels jerked mid-transit. 1 Thessian cargo carrier emitted hull stress alarms across the projection. Delegates shouted over one another. That vessel carries medical shipments. Recalibrate the corridor. Vorik stepped forward physically this time, amber bioluminescence flaring along his elongated frame. This exceeds negotiation parameters. Jason remained still. It expected resistance. A new overlay formed. Energy from the lattice began routing directly through the early adopter fleet, using their integration nodes as reinforcement amplifiers. Luma shimmered sharply, refracted light scattering wildly. It is forcing cohesion. Jason corrected evenly. It is forcing dependency. Public approval ticked upward, 59%. Another energy surge struck Terran redundancy grids. Protocol 7 nodes flickered under strain.
Mara's voice cut in sharply through secure channel. They're mapping every non-optimized relay path. Jason's eyes didn't leave the projection. Expected. High Arbiter Sareth rose partially from his luminous throne for the first time. Envoy Klein, clarify your objective. Jason stepped forward onto the central disk. Break the threshold. The chamber erupted. You would trigger containment. Isolation would fracture supply chains. This is reckless. Vorek's central eye locked onto Jason. You gamble sovereignty against survival. Jason met his gaze without emotion. Yes. He tapped the projection. Protocol 7 expanded, not to stabilize, but to fragment. Major economic arteries split into autonomous microclusters. Trade throughput dipped. 2.8%, 2.9%, 3%. Public approval wavered violently. The structure responded instantly. Energy density surged along the primary economic corridor. Freight vessels stalled mid-lane. Insurance markets froze. 3.1%. The containment alert flashed crimson across every feed. Containment review initiated. A collective intake of breath rippled through the chamber. Vorek's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter than at any prior moment. You have forced escalation. Jason's voice remained level. Watch. The extragalactic lattice shifted. Instead of isolating Earth, it targeted the early adopter species first. Their fleet icons locked into deep, rigid silver. Hard containment channel initiated. But a fracture line tore across the projection because Protocol 7 had already fragmented their dependency web. Isolation required centralized supply gravity. Gravity no longer existed. Containment execution stalled. The structure brightened violently. One of its outer energy filaments flickered, then collapsed inward with a visible distortion ripple. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Systemic fragmentation exceeding predictive tolerance, the structure transmitted, modulation unstable. Public approval plummeted, 61%, 55%, 48%. Live commentators reversed tone mid-broadcast. Integration unstable, alien optimization failing. The early adopter fleet flickered violently, silver dissolving into chaotic static, then snapping back to solid blue, full sovereignty restored. The red containment banner vanished. Inefficiency remained above threshold, but no isolation occurred. The structure surged again, energy spiking through its own reinforcement lattice, because it was compensating, because it had committed too much bandwidth to enforcement. Mara's voice came fast, energy density inside the structure exceeding safe variance. Vorek stared at the destabilizing lattice. It is overextending to preserve authority. Jason folded the newspaper slowly. Yes. High Arbiter Sareth rose fully now, 4 graceful arms spread, his luminous throne flaring brighter than at any prior moment. The Concordat will not be optimized. The chamber lighting shifted decisively towards Jason's position. For the first time, the extragalactic structure dimmed fractionally, not defeated, but pressured. Jason spoke one final time. You offered stability through control. A beat. We offer survival through unpredictability. The lattice attempted one more surge, but its outer geometry wavered visibly, silver veins thinning under compensatory strain. It was no longer evaluating, it was defending its own model, and the galaxy could see it.
The extragalactic lattice stopped compensating. It changed behavior. Across the projection dome, the destabilized outer filaments did not flare again. They went dark, not damaged, reallocated. Mara's voice cut in instantly. Jason, energy redistribution detected across internal core nodes. Jason didn't move. It's abandoning enforcement. Vorek's central eye narrowed. To what end? The answer came without warning. A concentrated beam of silver distortion lanced outward from the structure. Not toward trade corridors, not toward fleets, toward the Concordat's central relay spine. Every major civilization's military command synchronization passed through that spine. Not centralized control, but synchronized awareness. The beam struck. The chamber lights flickered violently. Across the dome, fleet icons froze. Krexar destroyer formations stalled mid-maneuver. Terran defense grids locked in static alignment. Thessian harmonic beacons flatlined into silent blue. Ryzen gasped. Our response latency just spiked to 4 seconds. Vorek's bioluminescent patterns flared sharply. This is command paralysis. Jason nodded once. It stopped fighting our economy. A beat. It's attacking coordination. The structure transmitted, modulation stable again. Adaptive resistance unacceptable. Strategic autonomy will be removed. Not integration, not containment, removal. President Ward's holofeed flickered as Earth's stellar command lost synchronization with outer orbits. "Jason," she said evenly, though the strain was visible. "We're blind beyond inner orbit." High Arbiter Sereth's forearms tightened. "If the relay spine collapses, the Concordat fractures." Jason stepped forward. "Activate Protocol 9. The chamber froze. Mara's voice lowered. "Jason." Vorak turned fully toward him. "You concealed another contingency?" Jason didn't deny it. "Yes." The beam intensified. The central relay spine glowed white-hot on the projection, stress lines spidering across its quantum alloy structure. Fleet icons across the dome began drifting out of alignment, no longer synchronized under shared awareness. Isolation wasn't economic. It was strategic. Jason spoke calmly. "Protocol 9 severs shared command architecture." Ryzen recoiled. "That would permanently dissolve unified response." "Yes." The word landed like impact. High Arbiter Sereth's luminous eyes fixed on him. "You would dismantle the Concordat's core coordination?" Jason met his gaze. "If coordination is the attack vector." A fissure ripped across the relay spine's projection. Alarms cascaded through the chamber. Mara's voice cut in sharply. "Structural integrity at 72%. Vorak's voice hardened. "If we sever it, we cannot reconstitute easily." Jason replied evenly. "If we don't, it seizes control." The silver beam surged again. Fleet formations across the dome flickered into static. Firing solutions stalled, defensive arrays frozen mid-calibration. The structure spoke once more. "Centralized cognition required for survival. Autonomy introduces vulnerability." Jason lifted his wrist interface. "Protocol 9 authorized." President Ward's voice followed immediately. "Terran Command confirms." Vorak hesitated. One breath. Then, Krexar fleet severing relay integration. Sereth closed his eyes briefly. Zenthari oversight disengaging. Ryzen swallowed. Volari diplomatic net unlinking. Across the dome, the central relay spine fractured, not from damage, from deliberate disconnection. Quantum links dissolved. Shared command awareness collapsed into isolated sovereign grids. The silver beam struck again and passed through empty architecture. Because there was no single spine to anchor to, the beam destabilized mid-projection, scattering into harmless distortion. Fleet icons across the chamber flickered, then reappeared. Not synchronized, not unified. Independent. Vorak inhaled sharply. "My fleets are blind to Terran positions." Jason nodded. "So are ours." A heavy silence settled, because this was no temporary maneuver. They had just dismantled the structural heart of their interspecies coordination. Irreversibly. Mara's voice confirmed it. Shared command architecture offline. Reconstruction probability below 30%. Sereth straightened slowly. The Concordat as we knew it no longer exists. The extragalactic lattice recalibrated again, but this time, its projection wavered, because its model depended on central cognition, and that cognition had just been erased by choice. The structure transmitted, modulation uneven, fragmented systems statistically inferior. Jason looked up at it calmly. Predictable systems are controllable. A beat. We are no longer predictable. Across the dome, independent fleet clusters began repositioning under autonomous command. Krexar ships shifted to defensive wedge patterns. Terran grids activated staggered patrol algorithms. Thessian harmonic arrays pulsed in decentralized rhythm. No shared synchronization. No central spine. Nothing to seize. Vorak studied the projection. "You sacrificed unity." Jason answered evenly. "We sacrificed convenience." The extragalactic lattice dimmed fractionally along its core nodes. For the first time since arrival, it had lost a strategic lever permanently. Not stalled, not disrupted, gone. Sereth's voice resonated through the chamber. The Concordat stands, fragmented but sovereign. Jason folded the newspaper once more. The cost was real. Coordination slower. Response fragmented. Trust tested. But control? Untouchable. The structure did not advance. It did not threaten. It recalculated under a new constant. A galaxy willing to dismantle itself before being absorbed. And that was not in its model.
The chamber did not recover. It adapted. Across the projection dome, the shattered image of the central relay spine remained, its once unified architecture now fragmented into independent sovereign grids. Fleet icons moved again, not in harmony, in divergence. Krexar destroyer wedges rotated under autonomous command. Terran patrol matrices staggered unpredictably. Thessian harmonic arrays pulsed in asymmetric intervals. No shared cognition, no central spine, no single point to seize. The extragalactic lattice dimmed fractionally along its outer geometry. Then It expanded, not toward trade corridors, not toward fleets, toward probability modeling. Mara's voice cut through the chamber. Jason, it's shifting from enforcement to projection analysis. Jason nodded. It's calculating fragmentation outcome. The structure transmitted. Modulation colder now. Fragmented systems statistically inferior. Unified cognition remains optimal. Vorax stepped forward again, towering and rigid. Your model assumes survival requires control. The structure ignored him. Its internal energy nodes began forming predictive overlays across the dome, simulated futures. In one projection, Krexar fleet collides with Terran patrol due to latency. In another, Thessian trade routes collapse under uncoordinated routing. In a third, Volari agricultural shipments spoil before reaching peripheral colonies. Public feeds began flashing those projections live. Approval for reintegration ticked upward. 52%, 55%. Ryzen's antennae trembled. It's weaponizing our fragmentation. Jason didn't react. It expected fear. The structure sharpened its tone. Integration window reopened. Fragmented autonomy will produce cascading instability within 42 hours. A new countdown appeared. Not 90 seconds. 42 hours. Slow pressure. Long-term suffocation. High Arbiter Sereth stood fully from his throne, luminous veins blazing. You threaten us with our own independence? We present statistical inevitability. The projection shifted again. This time, the lattice simulated Terran stellar command overwhelmed under decentralized coordination lag. President Ward's holofeed flickered as the simulation overlaid her position. Public sentiment wavered again. 58%, 61%. Vorax's lower eye narrowed. It adapts quickly. Jason stepped forward onto the central disk. Yes, he zoomed the projection outward, beyond the Concordat, beyond the Kallax corridor, into deep interstellar darkness. You ran stress tests on our war, Jason said evenly. You modeled our economy, a beat. You anchored to our coordination. The structure's energy brightened slightly. Correct. Jason magnified the outer void. Small gravitational disturbances flickered at the edge of sensor range. Subtle, unstable. Vorax stiffened. That signature. Jason nodded once. You never stopped testing. The chamber went silent. Because they recognized it. The same distortion pattern that preceded the war. But this time, it wasn't within the Concordat. It was approaching the extragalactic lattice itself. Mara's voice sharpened. Energy fluctuations increasing along its outer boundary. The structure recalculated rapidly. Its predictive overlays flickered. One by one, they vanished. Public feeds caught it live. The lattice's confidence projections destabilizing. Jason spoke calmly. You optimized us against internal collapse. A beat. You never optimized against external uncertainty. The gravitational distortions intensified, pressing against the lattice's outer geometry. Energy coherence along its silver veins wavered, not catastrophic, but measurable. The structure transmitted again, modulation no longer perfectly smooth. Unknown variable detected. Vorax's bioluminescent patterns flared. It did not model this. Jason shook his head once. No. He turned slowly toward the chamber. You promised protection from unknown cosmic threats. The distortions pulsed harder. Closer. The lattice reallocated massive energy reserves outward to reinforce its boundary, and in doing so, its pressure against the Concordat lessened visibly. Public sentiment shifted again. 61% dropped to 53%. Ryzan whispered. It cannot enforce integration and defend itself simultaneously. Jason's voice remained level. Optimization requires prioritization. The structure dimmed along its inner projection nodes as more energy diverted to outer defense. Its countdown flickered. 42 hours. 41. Then, it vanished entirely. The lattice's geometry tightened defensively, not threatening, shielding. High Arbiter Sereth lowered one arm slowly. It withdraws from coercion. Jason corrected. It reallocates. The outer distortions surged again, closer to the lattice now. The same pattern, the same anomaly signature, but no longer under its control. Vorax looked toward Jason. You knew this would return. Jason met his gaze calmly. I knew unpredictability is universal. The extragalactic structure transmitted one final time. Integration deferred. Defensive recalibration prioritized. Across the dome, its projection shifted further from Concordat core space, not retreating fully, but no longer dominating. Fleet icons across the chamber stabilized under sovereign control, independent, fragmented, free. High Arbiter Sereth's luminous presence filled the chamber. The Concordat stands sovereign. Jason folded the newspaper once more. You offered inevitability. He looked at the lattice now, bracing against the approaching unknown. We offered complexity. The gravitational distortions pressed harder against the alien structure. And this time, it was the one being tested, not the galaxy. For the first time since its arrival, the extragalactic lattice was no longer the dominant force in the chamber. It was reacting, and humanity had shifted the balance of the board.
The extragalactic lattice did not vanish. It repositioned. Beyond the Calyx corridor, its immense geometric mass shifted outward by measurable degrees. Silver veins concentrated along its outer defensive arcs. No more countdowns, no more enforcement beams, no more inevitability projections. It was bracing. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, fleet icons stabilized under sovereign command. Independent grids flickered in decentralized rhythm, slower than before, less efficient, but untouched. High Arbiter Sereth remained standing. The Concordat remains sovereign, he declared, voice resonant and steady. But sovereignty now looked different. No central relay spine, no unified command architecture, no optimization grid. Fragmented, deliberate. Vorex studied the retreating lattice projection. It has not conceded. Jason shook his head once. No. A beat. It reprioritized. Across public feeds, sentiment stabilized below 40% for integration. Civilian commentators shifted tone from relief to wary respect. Human interference prevented absorption. Optimization not invulnerable. Unknown threat approaching alien structure. The gravitational distortions intensified along the lattice's outer boundary. Massive energy flares rippled across its surface as defensive fields engaged in layered pulses. Mara's voice entered the chamber calmly. Energy reserves holding at 88%. External anomaly pressure sustained. Ryzen's antennae trembled slightly. It promised to protect us from unknown threats. Jason nodded. It still might. The chamber turned toward him. Vorex's lower eye narrowed. Would you trust it? Jason's expression remained unreadable. I would prefer it focused outward. A silence followed, because the truth was unavoidable. The structure had not arrived to destroy. It had arrived to integrate. And now it faced something it had not modeled. High Arbiter Sereth stepped down from his luminous throne for the first time in centuries. The gesture alone rippled through the chamber. The Concordat stands independent, he said, slowly, but divided. Fleet projections reflected it clearly. Each civilization operating in isolation, defensive perimeters overlapping imperfectly. Jason stepped to the central disk. Division was the cost of control. A beat. But control was the point. President Elena Ward's holoprojection steadied fully now. Reconstruction of shared coordination? She asked. Jason shook his head. Not as it was. He gestured towards the fractured grid patterns. We rebuild without central gravity. Vorex's voice lowered. Distributed coordination. Yes. Mara's confirmation followed instantly. Independent nodes capable of voluntary synchronization only. Ryzan blinked. No enforced spine. Jason nodded. Nothing to seize. The extragalactic lattice transmitted again, quieter, modulated through defensive static. Concordat fragmentation reduces predictive certainty. Cooperative defense possible under conditional parity. The chamber shifted. Not domination, not integration, negotiation. Sereth's luminous gaze remained fixed on the projection. You request alliance? A pause. Mutual survival statistically favorable. Vorex's amber eyes flared briefly. You shift tone quickly. Jason answered instead. Optimization met unpredictability. The gravitational distortion struck again, harder this time. A visible flare burst across the lattice's outer geometry, scattering shards of energy like fractured light. Public feed showed it clearly. The alien structure was under real pressure. Jason spoke calmly. You offered us safety in exchange for control. A beat. Now you need cooperation without control. The lattice did not deny it. Revised engagement parameters available. Silence filled the chamber. Not mocking. Measured. The power dynamic had completely shifted. High Arbiter Sereth turned slowly, facing the assembled delegates. The Concordat will not integrate. His luminous veins grew brighter. But we will not ignore a shared threat. Vorek crossed his arms behind his back. Krexar fleets will defend sovereign space.
President Ward added evenly. Terran in command will coordinate voluntarily. Ryzen swallowed. Valari resources will assist where requested. Luma shimmered in soft lavender. Thessian harmonics will reinforce outer defense. Jason looked up at the lattice one final time. You evaluated us. A beat. We evaluated you. The distortion surged again, pressing hard against the alien structure's defensive arc. Energy flared brilliantly along its outer perimeter. But this time, Conquerdort fleets repositioned autonomously towards the outer boundary, not synchronized, not commanded by a spine, voluntary. Vorex destroyer wedges angled outward. Terranin patrol grids adjusted asymmetrically. No single system in control, but aligned by choice. The lattice registered it. Its modulation stabilized slightly. External anomaly mitigation probability increased by 21%. Jason folded the newspaper slowly. Unpredictability isn't chaos. He met the projection calmly. It's resilience. The chamber lighting brightened. No longer overshadowed, no longer threatened. The extragalactic lattice remained beyond the corridor, defensive, recalculating, but no longer dictating the galaxy's fate. The Conquerdort stood fragmented, yet sovereign. Less efficient, more dangerous, and entirely free. The war had been a test. Integration had been an offer. Now, the balance of the galaxy had shifted, not towards control, but towards choice. The extragalactic lattice braced against the advancing anomaly. The Conquerdort stood sovereign, fragmented, free. Jason folded the newspaper and turned away from the projection. They came to evaluate us. A faint pause. Next time, his eyes shifted towards the dark beyond the corridor. We go first.